Hi, this is Jerry Burnett. This podcast is going to cover citing sources orally. There's another podcast that will be on how to do it in your written work, how to cite the sources for your speech in written work. But this podcast is going to cover where to get the information and then how to give information in your speeches properly as an oral citation. Now, you might be using any of three different textbooks in one of my classes. It might be a Beebe and Beebe text, Grayson Skinner, or Lucas. But you will look on the table of contents for these titles, and there's a whole chapter that tells you how to get supporting material for your speeches. And any supporting material that you get, you need to cite the source of that information in your speech. Now, another good place to get information is your 20 favorite quotes list. Probably at the beginning of the semester, you made a list of your favorite 20 quotes, some funny, some serious, a variety of quotes. These can support your information and they should be cited, but this is not research. Most of those quotes are just famous quotes or quotes you like. You're also going to need to do some research for at least two or three of your speeches. And this research might get you opinions, expert testimony. Lay testimony is what some people have to say about the topic, and they wouldn't be considered experts in the field, but you value what they have to say anyway. And then the literary quotes might come from your list of 20 favorite quotes. Now, there's a variety of supporting material types. Illustrations, explanations, you can have descriptions, definitions, and those can come right from the dictionary. You might want to make an analogy. Sometimes you find statistics that are either startling or surprising that you want to include, and then the opinions of others. These others might be experts, but they might just be people in your world. But you need a variety of supporting material to give credence to what you're saying in your speech. Now, there's a variety of ways to find credible sources. If I've assigned you to give an oral citation in a speech, I expect at least one of your oral citations to come from the academic database. This is found at the electronic website of your library, of your school's library. I have another podcast that explains how to find that and do that. But just know that if you are required to have 2 to 6 oral citations, I'm going to be looking on your bibliography and I'm going to be listening in your speech to see, did you get at least one piece of information from the academic databases? Next, you can get credible sources for information just from your own personal knowledge and experience. Now, this will be stated, but you don't really cite the source because you are the source. It is your intellectual property. Next, you can get great information off the internet these days. You can sit in the comfort of your home and click away and find a lot of good stuff. Now, the end of the URL might be edu, org, gov, and even .com websites can be credible sources. But you have to use critical thinking skills to make sure that what you're getting is accurate and good information. Never cite Wikipedia. Can you use Wikipedia? Absolutely. But Wikipedia is considered a first source. You can go to take your topic to Wikipedia, type it in, and you can get some ideas of some primary sources from that article. A primary source, a secondary source, these are sources that are credible and that you would want to use. Wikipedia only gives you ideas of where to go find primary sources. Primary sources are the originator of the information or the data. A secondary source could be like a textbook that cites other information. So just remember, Wikipedia can be a good first source, a way to go and find some credible primary and secondary sources, but never in your speech should you be saying, Wikipedia said, or on your bibliography page, I should not ever see Wikipedia as a source on your bibliography. Now, there are lots of traditional materials. A lot of times these are on paper. Everything hasn't gone electronic, but much has gone electronic. But what kind of paper things give good information for you to cite in your speeches? Well, there's books, magazines, journals, newspapers, dictionaries, atlases, encyclopedias. Use them. Use a variety of sources. In some classes, if you have to have 6 sources for a speech, you're required to use 3 different types. So you might want to get something from the internet, something from a paper source like a book, and then it might be something else from a survey or an interview. Interviews are great, whether it's you doing the interview or you record an interview or get information from an interview in some other format. And SurveyMonkey, that's part of some of your textbook websites. They tell you and teach you how to actually survey your own class. You can take surveys on campus or in your class, and that information can be a gold mine for you to cite in your speeches. But you always need to be thinking critically. You don't want to commit plagiarism yourself, and you want to be able to detect plagiarism. So first, what are some things that people say that they may be trying to con you or are really not good ways to state information? If somebody says, research shows blah, 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 you immediately should have a red flag pop up in your mind and think, whose research? What research? Where did this research come and how recent is this research? Or somebody may say, a survey revealed that the last time, and then they go on to tell you, but they don't tell you whose survey, what survey, where did they get the survey from? Now, even if you're using a magazine or a newspaper and you say, the New York Times reported, you never give a publication name without giving the date. So to just say the New York Times, they've been publishing for years and daily, and so that's not really giving the exact source of your information. And finally, to say, I once heard or I read or I saw something, that's not citing the source. There are 3 parts to an oral citation. Let's get into the meat of what I want to explain to you so that you know how to create an oral citation. There needs to be the source of the information, a verb, and then the data or the information. You should be citing anything and everything that is not your intellectual property. If you've heard it on the radio or a TV show, you saw it in a movie, your grandma or your aunt says it all the time, maybe it's from a book or a journal. If you didn't come from the womb knowing a lot of things, you learn things from other people, and you want to cite that information. Give credit where credit's due, even if you're paraphrasing it or putting it in your own words. So if you're showing something, paraphrasing something, rephrasing, or summarizing, I'm not just talking about direct quotes and quotations from written work or from oral work. If you're even paraphrasing, cite the source. Okay, how do you cite the source? First, you give the person's name if you know it. Sometimes a newspaper article or some other thing on the web, it might give you great information on the website, but you don't know who created it. If you know the person's name, then state the person's name. If you're positive that everybody in the room knows that person, such as Abraham Lincoln or even Elvis, people would know who that is. But if you're using a name and you're not positive that every single person in your audience knows who that is, then you need to give some kind of qualifier. What if I say John Maxwell said? Well, who's John Maxwell? A few of you might know. Instead, I might say author, leading author, and best-selling author and one of the leading spokesmen of motivational speakers. I would give him some kind of a title to let you know who it is. If you use the title doctor and you're talking about medical things, a lot of times you are scammed on the TV because they say Dr. So-and-so said to use this supplement when in fact he's a doctor of something other than medicine. Give the credentials or an explanation of the person that you're citing. Also tell how you obtained it if that is important to the citation. You might want to say, I heard Mary Beth on WXYZ on the morning show say, okay, I've used her name, I've said she's a radio host, and then I give the information that she had. If you're using a publication, you want to tell what type of publication and the name of the publication. Maybe it's a journal, maybe it's a newspaper. Anytime you use dated material, give the date of the publication. That will be part of the source of the oral citation. And when you're citing websites, don't say www. Leave that part off of the oral citation. Jump right into the URL that comes right after the dot. For example, you might want to say Pepsi.com or some usreports.gov. Don't use the www. Also, don't give the name of the database. If you've used a database to get information, that database is going to give you the name of the publication, the name of the author. That's your source. Don't cite the name of the database. And when you are giving your speeches, I always want to hear the source first. Now, in the real world, it doesn't matter if you give the source at the beginning or at the end, as long as you give the source. You don't want to plagiarize. But in my courses, when I'm trying to critique your speeches and fill out a rubric, I need to hear the source first. Even if it's something like, Forrest Gump says, life is like a box of chocolates. I want to hear the Forrest Gump before the citation, not after, because often while I'm trying to critique your speech and see, do you have vocal variety? Are you using verbal pauses? Do you show affect displays? In amongst all that, I'm trying to count how many oral citations you have. So please always give the source first, or you're not going to get credit for the citation. Now, the end of the citation is the data or the information. And remember, you're going to cite every bit of information that you have from any source that's not your own intellectual property. These could be exact quotes or paraphrased, summarized. These are things you've seen, like charts, or sometimes it's a real good, some kind of thing that you got, table or something off the internet. Or it might be music or something that you've heard. It might even be pictures or photographs. Anything you use in a speech, if it's not your original property, cite the source. Now, in between the source and the information, you link the two of those with a verb. What verb links a source to the information? You can find 4 columns. If you look on the table of contents in your workbook that you have, that you're using for your course, look on the table of contents and you'll find something that says citing sources orally. And it's going to show you how to do this creatively. You don't always want to say, Joe said this, the New York Times says that. You don't always want to say it says or it states. You want to use a variety of words. Let's say I'm back to the top of the page of that creative ways to cite sources orally. I might say, in his book, Thinking for a Change, author and motivational speaker John Maxwell, all of that was the source. Then I link it to the data by using the word exhorts. Maybe I could have said he stated, he exclaimed, he explained, he referred, or he refuted. Pick one of the verbs. I've given you a list of 4 columns of verbs. Use them. Have a variety of verbs in your oral citations. So let's review. Some speeches, in fact most of your speeches except your first one, are going to require oral citations. One is going to be required from an academic database, whether it's research or not. You need to use an academic database for at least one piece of information. Next, cite anything and everything that's not your own intellectual property. This is things that are seen or that are heard. And last but not least, there are 3 parts to an oral citation: the source, a verb, and then the data or information. Always give me the source first, then use a variety of verbs from the list on the page in your workbook, and then give the data or the information credibly and accurately. If you need additional help, I've got a podcast called Citing Sources in Bibliography and Written Work. This tells how to cite your sources on paper. This podcast has only covered how to do it orally. Also, there's another podcast that's going to explain how to access your school's electronic library. You can review this presentation. It's a PowerPoint presentation. You can review it. I've posted it in D2L or Blackboard. Or you can go and visit your own campus library. Ask a librarian or a library worker to help you find some credible information if you need it. And for sure, contact me. You can contact me by email, by cell phone, or Skype. I'll be glad to help you because I want to hear some great oral citations.